Hi, I'm Kevin Hoyt, Platform Evangelist with Adobe. Welcome back to this session on RIA problems you never knew existed. Now here's another interesting problem. This is the problem of operational efficiency. You might think of what do you mean by operational efficiency? You're not talking about code anymore, you're talking about how we work as a business. That's right, that can sometimes be an RIA problem. See, what happens is that IT generally thinks that they are leading the organization. The reality is that IT is a supportive organization. It's designed to support the operations and the functionality of the business, and the business might be completely separate from what IT does, right? It doesn't have to be a technology business. It could be a business selling candles or cans of soup or whatever the case may be. Those different environments and those products exist in a space, in a business atmosphere that might change dramatically or not. And when they do change, well, IT is reactive. Right? So the business is, and the product itself is what's actually leading the way. IT, as a supportive organization, will always be reactive, trying to catch up and deliver what the company needs to continue on in an operational role. Now, if you look at something like a nice, clean IT architecture, you say, oh, well, I have my service tier, I have my resource tier, I got my databases, I got my directories, I got my security and my business logic, I've got my orchestration, it's all set up, it's all partitioned, it's all clustered, it's all failover, it's all beautiful. Great, good for you. You're on the ball until someone comes to you and says, hey, IT, the business is going this direction. We have a new product that we're launching, a new variety, or whatever the case may be. We need you to do this. Well, that's going to take some resources. Now, inevitably, you deliver something, and that's great. And the problem with being great is that everybody else thinks you're great too, and they want more. The business changes again. You've got more changes. You've got less operational efficiency to deal with. You've got more changes. Now you've got two changes, and maybe those changes are interconnected or even dependent on one another. Someone says, well, guess what? That original one actually needs updating to go with the latest version of the product or the latest variation of the product or whatever the case may be that the business needs. So you got to make some changes, and that's even more out of your resources. And then, at this point, you're kind of in a catch-up mode. And so for every kind of change you have to make, you're now eating more and more and more. And eventually, IT has nothing left. This is the nature of the game. And it's at this point that someone gets together and pulls together a powwow and says, gosh, we need to solve this problem. What can we do? And the answer is usually something like, oh, let's invest heavily in an Oracle system or an SAP system or what have you. And I'm not saying that there aren't a place and time for each of those different technologies. But I think in many cases, the rush to those technologies is put before understanding what the problem was that got them there in the first place. Implementing a large system like this takes time and is going to take just as much resources, if not more, than it did before. It's not a magic pill. So operational efficiency. What we mean in terms of RIA and services-oriented architecture is what we want to be able to do is take our services, our SOA environment, right? Because that's really what the business is going to say. Well, we need a new piece of infrastructure to support this change, or we're integrating with this partner. And in today's SOA-centric world, we're going to develop that as a service. So we make a service, our endpoint for a piece of logic, and we put another one, and we have another one, and that's great. And those are all atomic. They're all based on their own little world. And then at some point, they collide. They come together, and they need to get tied together to pull from one another to make a composite. And that's great. The problem with that is that generally we do that with business logic in yet another service. So then you have business logic in a service dependent and tying together two other services. That's a brittle environment. It's a brittle architecture waiting to just kind of self-destruct on you. What you might consider doing is taking that business logic out of the services themselves or even out of the code and using something like using a business process management tool or orchestration tool to separate that out. Tie the services together using a middle tier that lets the business analyst get involved. Something that the business analyst can use to tie together what the services should be and how they should be functioning. And even if we can do it even one step better, let the business analyst define what the services are in general. Don't be so uptight about having to define every little last bit and piece of what your service is. And then this bigger picture of taking the business logic out of the service and letting the services actually be really atomic to really improve your operational efficiency when you're building an RIA is called process serving. Process serving is one of the core concepts to Lifecycle Enterprise Suite. There's a lot of information in Lifecycle Enterprise Suite, a lot of information on Lifecycle Enterprise Suite. And one of those core functionalities is to be able to decouple the atomic services from the composite services via a user interface tool that the business analyst can leverage. So process serving is a great answer to some of the operational efficiency problems that come about when we deal with RIA. Well, that's enough for this RIA problem. I'll see you next time. I'm Kevin Hoyt.